coming up.
It was revealed at the public inquiry that during the 2019 election, the Prime Minister's Department, the PCO, asked Facebook to remove a Buffalo Chronicle article on Justin Trudeau on the basis that it contained disinformation and risked threatening the integrity of the election. In response, Facebook removed the post. Was Facebook contacted by the Prime Minister's Department in the 2021 election with any request to take down Beijing-directed disinformation targeting now former Conservative Member of Parliament Kenny Chiu?
X supports Dr. Strauss's efforts to vindicate his free speech rights without fear of unfair retaliation, knowing and understanding that this person was a candidate for a political party. I want to know why it is that a platform that is claiming that they are protectors of free speech, and with the study that I have cited earlier, why is it that they are interfering in Canadian political democratic process?
Would you still recommend the repeal of this online censorship bill, C11, from the Trudeau government?
I don't believe that's in the spirit of the program.
What if I was thrown out of my caucus? What if I'm still a member of parliament, but I said very foolish things on your platform and my party leader decided to throw me out of caucus because it embarrassed our party? Would I be able to sue to be reinstated in caucus?
This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
I would like to welcome our witnesses today.
Canada, we have Shane Huntley, Senior Director, Threat Analysis Group, who's joining us by video conference. We've got Jeanette Patel, who is the Director, Government Affairs and Public Policy Canada. From Meta Platforms, Inc., Rachel Curran is here, who is the Head of Public Policy Canada. And then we've got Lindsay Hundley, who is the Global Threat Intelligence Lead by video conference. From TikTok, Steve Dyer, Director of Public Policy and Government Affairs Canada, and Justin Ehrlich, who is the Global Head of Policy Development by video conference. And also from X Corporation, Wilfredo Fernandez, who is the Head of Government Affairs in the United States of America and Canada. I want to welcome you all to committee for this very, very important study.
I'll start with Mr. Fernandez. Which foreign state is the most active in spreading or attempting to spread disinformation in Canada on your platform?
So from our experience over the past year, the Spamflage campaign, which is linked to China, has been the most active.
Now, speaking of Spamflage campaign, that was detected by the rapid response mechanism, or at least it was reported on by the rapid response mechanism at Global Affairs that involved a campaign that began in late August and intensified into, I believe, October of last year, in which it targeted dozens of MPs by falsely accusing these MPs of various ethical and criminal violations. Is that correct? That's what you're referring to?
Yeah, so over the last year, we've taken down about 60,000 accounts linked to the Spamflage operations. About 9,500 of those came from escalations from the rapid response mechanism.
9,000 that the rapid response mechanism brought to X's attention?
That's correct.
Okay. And maybe I will turn to Meta now to maybe address the Spamflage campaign, because Facebook was also used, and perhaps you could elaborate on the steps that you've taken and Facebook's or Meta's interactions with the rapid response mechanism.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll turn to my colleague, Dr. Hundley, to speak more about this.
Yes, of course. So we've been enforcing against Spamflage since 2019. Last year, we did a really large enforcement under our coordinated and authentic behavior policy. Spamflage is a long-running cross-internet operation with global targeting. We've removed thousands of accounts and pages after we were able to kind of connect different clusters of activity together as part of a single operation, and we're able to attribute that operation to individuals associated with Chinese law enforcement. We've identified over 50 platforms and forums that Spamouflage has used, including Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube, TikTok, Reddit, Pinterest, Medium, Blogspot, LiveJournal, VidConque, Vimeo, and dozens of other smaller platforms and forums. So like many other China origin operations, we have not found evidence of Spamouflage getting significant, substantial engagement among authentic communities on our surfaces. We have seen targeting, as it is a global operation, so we have in fact seen targeting of audiences in Canada. As part of this targeting, researchers as the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, for instance, have described the operation's use of generative AI audio and doctored YouTube videos that was shared on other platforms with zero or minimal engagement from real users. We've engaged a couple of times with the rapid response mechanism, including just yesterday about Spamouflage activity, and I'm happy to report in that instance that they were found that we had been able to proactively remove the vast majority of activity that they were tracking.
Yeah, and just going back to the specific Spamouflage campaign that I referenced that occurred last year, specifically targeting MPs, what was the scale of that campaign using the Facebook platform, and what was the response from the rapid response mechanism vis-a-vis Facebook?
Yeah, so unfortunately, I cannot give you direct specific numbers on like the scale of that one specific campaign, again, because Spamouflage is consistent of thousands upon thousands of accounts, and they kind of drop in and out of different campaigns overall. That being said, when we engaged with the rapid response mechanism, we had already been tracking a lot of the activity that they had shared with us and had removed a lot of it, although, of course, information sharing from government partners like these is really helpful for identifying anything that does get past our automated detection systems.
Okay. On a different note, but to Meta, it was revealed at the public inquiry that during the 2019 election, the Prime Minister's Department, the PCO, asked Facebook to remove a Buffalo Chronicle article on Justin Trudeau on the basis that it contained disinformation and risked threatening the integrity of the election. In response, Facebook removed the post. Was Facebook contacted by the Prime Minister's Department in the 2021 election with any request to take down Beijing-directed disinformation targeting now former Conservative Member of Parliament Kenny Chiu?
I'm not aware of any of those requests, but this is something that we can check with our internal teams and get back to you on.
Now established that it's now been established that during the 2021 election, the Beijing regime launched a sophisticated disinformation campaign using various social media platforms with the goal of defeating certain Conservative candidates and re-electing Justin Trudeau. Was Facebook contacted by the Prime Minister's Department to take down disinformation about then Conservative leader Erin O'Toole?
I can chime in here, Dr. Hunley, and you should comment as well. To my knowledge, we were not contacted by anyone in the Privy Council office or Global Affairs.
And that related as well to more broadly the disinformation campaign directed by Beijing targeting Conservatives.
Quick response, please.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
I appreciate you providing statistics in your opening remarks today. Here's another one. A 2021 study found that in 5 G7 countries, Twitter had, quote, statistically significant difference favoring the political right wing. The study found that Canada had the largest discrepancy between the right and left, with Liberals having an amplification of 43% compared to 167% for Conservatives. Why does X favor right-wing politicians?
So our mission, our operations, our ethos are politically agnostic. Our algorithms actually don't factor in political sentiment and how they recommend content.
So I will ask you, does X provide financial support to any Conservative or right-wing politicians in Canada?
No, X does not engage in any political giving anywhere in the world.
So in May of this year, X announced that it would be funding Pierre Poilievre's Conservative candidate Matt Strauss in his lawsuit with a Canadian university over vaccine misinformation. Matt Strauss has been active on X promoting anti-establishment conspiracy theories, claiming that the WEF is directing government policy and spreading vaccine misinformation on Russian propaganda channel RT. How much financial support has been received to date by this Pierre Poilievre's conservative candidate from X?
Again, X does not engage in any political giving.
Which is, I'm not sure why you're saying that, because X has gone on the record to say that they are footing the legal bills for this person. So I would ask you then, again, are there any other politicians in Canada, whether at the federal, provincial, municipal levels, who X has supported financially?
No.
How much financial support has been provided to Canadian politicians in general from X here in Canada?
Again, X does not engage in political giving.
Does X have mechanisms in place to ensure that any money that has been provided, whether it's to your knowledge or not, and I'm hoping that you will come back with that information that is being used for the intended purposes? And as I say, Mr. Fernandez, it is on the record that X has agreed that it is footing the bill for this conservative candidate for their legal fees. And I would like to know more information about X's involvement with our Canadian democratic process.
Yeah, I'm happy to follow up with more information on our efforts around the world to support folks who are dealing with issues of freedom of speech. But we do not engage in political giving or political campaign giving.
So, Chair, given that there's a discrepancy in the information that is publicly available that has been published by X, that they have claimed and agreed that they are footing the bill for a right-wing candidate of the Pierre Poilievre Conservative Party, and the discrepancy of what Mr. Fernandez has said today, clear contradiction in what he's saying. I would like for there to be, hopefully with the consent of all of our committee, documents to be produced, the names of all Canadian politicians who have received financial support from X, how much financial support has been received to date by each of those candidates or elected officials, how much financial support each is entitled to receive, the mechanisms in place to ensure that all money is going to the intended purposes for which there has been commitments made by X to these candidates, and proof that all money to date has gone to intended purposes and that checks and balances are functioning. And then lastly, the status of all legal proceedings for all of the above that I've referred to.
Okay. You seem to be privy to information that certainly I don't have or any other members, so I don't see any problem with that type of information being requested. Okay, I'm gonna stop the clock for Ms. Khalid here. What's your question, Mr. Barrett?
So we would have to know that those documents exist for the committee to be able to request them. So the committee does not have the power to request documents that don't exist or to request the creation of documents. So I would be interested. So if this is a motion that Ms. Khalid's putting forward, what we'd like to see the motion in writing, because we're just without knowing that these documents exist, to your point, Chair, I'm not really sure what the source of this is. So let's see what the request is, and then we can consider it. But we're not able to provide unanimous consent for the committee to do something that the committee doesn't have the power to do.
Yeah. So
quote you on that later.
That's an interesting point. Can we deal with this later?
No, Chair, I do want to make a point here because I feel that...
I'm starting your clock again then because you're making a point. Okay,
sure, go ahead. And to respond to Mr. Barrett's concerns, I will read a tweet from X on May 3rd of 2024 where it says, X is proud to fund a lawsuit filed by Dr. Matthew Strauss an Ontario critical care physician and professor, against his former employer, Queen's University, after Dr. Strauss argued against wide COVID lockdowns and mandates on his X account. His Twitter, Queen's University, publicly ostracized him, retaliated against him, and ultimately forced him to resign because his opinions did not conform to the university's political orthodoxy. X supports Dr. Strauss's efforts to vindicate his free speech rights without fear of unfair retaliation, knowing and understanding that this person was a candidate for a political party. I want to know why it is that a platform that is claiming that they are protectors of free speech, and with the study that I've cited earlier, why is it that they're interfering in Canadian political democratic process?
Okay, so your time's up. I will give Mr. Fernandez an opportunity quickly to respond to that, and then we'll circle back to the information that you're asking for later.
Yeah, our company and its leadership has made clear that if there are people around the world whose employment has been affected by what they've said on the platform and exercising their free speech, that we will support them in helping defend them. So that is what that is linked to. And so I just want to make that point. Thank you.
Thank you. My question's to Ms. Patel. The YouTube Chief Product Officer, Neil Mohan, in response to Bill C-11, said of the bill, and I quote, "has the potential to disadvantage Canadian creators who build their businesses on our platform," end quote. So can you tell me, Ms. Patel, about the Keep YouTube Yours campaign that was launched in response to Bill C-11?
Of course. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to that. So as you may recall, when C-11 was originally tabled, it was not intended to capture UGC, user-generated content. And that was really important for our creators because creators rely on their content being recommended to audiences who will love it, no matter where they are in the world. So, if you think about Canada is about 2% of the world's population, YouTube has a global audience of over 2 billion monthly logged in users. And that's the market that Canadian creators cared about so deeply. And when we were advocating on C-11, our main message was that we wanted to ensure that we were protecting the creative ecosystem that these creators had built businesses on, really successful businesses. And so it was not about prioritizing, Canadian creators to Canadians. It needed to be about providing, a level playing field for them to find their audiences all over the world. And so that was what we were advocating for.
Right. I know that famed Canadian creators like Margaret Atwood likened this legislation to Soviet-era censorship. So I'm wondering, Ms. Patel, with the bill having been enacted, do you or would you still recommend the repeal of this online censorship bill, C-11, from the Trudeau government?
That's a really great question. We're obviously still in the middle of understanding how the CRTC intends to implement this. Our focus, regardless of the decision of parliamentarians now and in the future, is really on protecting and preserving the ecosystem. So we will engage constructively, whether that's with the CRTC or whether that's with parliamentarians who are reviewing, the future of this legislation.
So I have a question for Meta, and it's about the impact of the Online News Act and the effect that it's having on local journalism. And so I know that I've heard in my community, and I've heard from Canadians across the country that work in the news space, that when this law was passed, that in its form, they then saw their traffic that was coming to them for free from Facebook hit a wall. It dropped right off. In some cases, it caused outlets to lay off journalists. In some cases, it caused them to close. And I just and so I'm curious about if you've measured that impact. But I'd also like to know about the space that it has opened up when reputable and accredited journalists, independent journalists, that space is now being filled by other actors, and the potential for the spread of misinformation in the place of news that was previously being sought out and shared on your platform.
Yeah, I think we disagree with the contention that that space has been replaced by misinformation, MP Cooper. What it's been replaced by is content from friends MP Barrett. Sorry about that. What it's been replaced by is content from our users' friends and families. It's been replaced by content from other pages that they follow, whether those are non-governmental organizations, politicians, and civic content.
And in about 30 seconds, if I can just interrupt, and what about the impact on local news?
Yeah, so we signaled to the government well in advance of removing news from our platforms that this was going to be the impact. We said, look, there's going to be a disproportionately negative impact on smaller digital-first publications. We would like to avoid that. We think the value transfer flows the other way. We are providing great value to publishers. Please don't scope us into the bill so that we have to remove news.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Housefather.
So at the end of the last round of questioning from Ms. Khalid, you did acknowledge that you were funding the lawsuit of Mr. Strauss, and you said that you would fund lawsuits, or X would fund lawsuits of people who lost their jobs related to comments they made on the platform. So if I was a member of parliament and I made foolish comments on the platform attacking, for example, a specific ethnic group, and as a result the voters of my riding decided to not re-elect me in the next election because I said very stupid things on your platform, would I be able to get X to fund a legal challenge on that?
I don't believe that's in the spirit of the program.
What if I was thrown out of my caucus? What if I'm still a member of parliament, but I said very foolish things on your platform and my party leader decided to throw me out of caucus because it embarrassed our party? Would I be able to sue to be reinstated in caucus?
We would welcome you to use the service to speak about your challenges and your positions.
Okay, now that you have at least acknowledged that you're funding a Canadian political candidate's legal challenge, would you be able to disclose to the committee, would you agree to disclose to the committee what number of political candidates in Canada you are funding legal challenges from, and any supporting documents related to the costs that you have incurred related to those legal challenges?
I'm happy to take the request back to our legal team. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Who is the chair? Who is the majority shareholder and chair of X?
That's Mr. Elon Musk.
And how much percentage share does he have?
I don't know. I'd have to get back to you on that.
80%? Would that ring a bell, Mr. Fernandez?
I'm not sure. I'd have to get back to you on that.
Okay. Well, would you agree that Mr. Elon Musk is the chair, correct, of X?
That's correct. He's chair, head of product, and chief technology officer.
So he's also an executive officer on X?
Yes, he leads our product and engineering teams.
And yet you stated in previous testimony that you have no political givings with Twitter. So or X. So when Mr. Elon Musk has, as referencing an NBC News article, misleading election claims have accrued 1.2 billion views on X, new analysis says, under the nonprofit Center for Countering Digital Hate, said that his debunked claims are spread widely and don't appear to be subject to X's community notes fact-checking system. So you're not signing on to the EU code, and yet your chair has 1.2 billion views of misleading election claims. As a representative of the company, what do you have to say about that?
Quickly.
So no user is above community notes. In fact, he has received several, and no one at X has the ability to place or remove a community note.
Okay, Mr. Caputo, you're up for 5. Go ahead.
I find that very difficult to believe. I find that, in fact, impossible
Sorry,
to believe.
Mr. Green, your time's up. Mr. Caputo, go ahead. 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to pick up where the Liberals have
seemingly taken a study on misinformation and trying to spread more misinformation.
What else is new with that?
Mr. Fernandez, could you please take a minute to expand on the nature and role of X's legal funding program?
As I've shared before, the goal of the program is to support individuals whose employers have impacted their employment as a result of things that they've said on the service.
So to be clear, is the support that's provided in this case to the person, Dr. Strauss, it's related solely to employment and not political candidacy?
That's correct.
And in this specific case, is it related solely to his forced resignation from Queen's University?
I don't have all the details of that particular case in front of me, but I'd be happy to follow up with more.
Thank you. You were just talking about community notes, so it seems timely, and I'm just going to reference a few community notes. This one here from the leader of the NDP, Jagmeet Singh, dated October 13th. Last year, Cenovus raked in $37 billion in profits and a whopping $64 billion in 2022. There is a community note on that with a link to Yahoo Finance News. August 17th, Justin Trudeau told Canadians things would be better. Instead, they've gotten worse. Families are losing their homes, and it goes on. Community note. Justin Trudeau is in government because of a confidence and supply agreement with Jagmeet Singh. And the community note goes on. March 18th, breaking. The vote is in. We have forced the Liberals to stop selling arms to the Israeli government, support the ICC and the ICJ, place sanctions on extremist settlers, and much more. Committee note. A motion in the House in question does not force the Liberals to do anything. It goes on. March 7th, another community note. February 27th. This is another one. This is actually a very interesting one. 80% of the grocery market is controlled by 5 corporations. And then he goes on and says both Liberal and Conservative parties receive campaign donations from the 3, Sobeys, Metro, and you guessed it, Loblaws. Metro is really interesting that it's added there, given that his brother lobbies for them. The claim in the Post is false. Corporate donations to federal political parties have been forbidden by law in Canada for over 15 years. It's kind of like when the Liberals say assault-style weapons, which have been illegal for 40 years, and they know it. Another one on conflicts of interest. So what do we have? 8 community notes. Have you ever seen a political leader in Canada who's been community noted this many times?
I'm not sure, but all the data related to community notes is publicly available and publicly accessible. It's uploaded every single day, going back to the inception of the program, which allows researchers around the world to study the system.
Not to be outdone, the Deputy Prime Minister, I'm looking at August 23, 2021. Great day, my anniversary. A video tweet, this is from CBC no less, a video tweeted by incumbent Liberal candidate Chrystia Freeland, Finance Minister and Deputy Prime Minister now, who served as Deputy Prime Minister in Justin Trudeau's government, was given a label Sunday from Twitter which marked it as manipulated media. Have you ever seen anybody this high in government community noted, Mr. Fernandez?
Yes, just I'm aware that there are, the @POTUS account in the United States has received community notes before.
Oh, interesting. So this would be on par with things that Donald Trump has stated? Or Joe Biden, sorry? Is that where you're going?
The @POTUS account has received community notes before, yes.
Interesting. Okay. Let's get on here now to...
30 seconds, Mr. Caputo.
Okay. I apologize. I thought that I was going to be having a little bit more time here. We have heard all about Russian disinformation, and this can go to Mr. Fernandez or Ms. Kern. All we hear about in Parliament is far-right Russian disinformation. Isn't it true that the greatest source of disinformation, particularly when it came to the 2021 election and what resulted in Mr. Kenny Chiu losing his seat, was actually from the PRC? Is that correct?
We may have to come back. I'm going to give you like one-word answer. That's it.
Dr. Henley.
I cannot quantify the amount of disinformation in the 2021 election.
My questions are also no surprise to X. Mr. Fernandez, does X collaborate with any partners, external organizations, or professional fact checkers to address disinformation?
No, we do not have a traditional fact-checking program. We have developed community notes.
In your opening statements, you talked about, the desire of X to be, forthright and honest, and you said, and I sort of quote you, but I might have gotten it wrong, a critical platform as it pertains to elections. Now, your CEO, Elon Musk, has been trafficking disinformation on X as it relates to the 2024 U.S. presidential election coming up this November. On October 4th, he retweeted a false claim that said as many as 2 million non-citizens had been registered to vote in Texas, Arizona, and Pennsylvania. On October 19th, he retweeted a post suggesting that the state's voter rolls were likely to contribute to widespread fraud. These were all debunked, and there are numerous other instances as well of election disinformation, and this is the CEO. So clearly your in-house fact-checking is not working, but my question to you is, how can Canadians be sure that Elon Musk and other ex-employees will not spread disinformation about Canadian federal, provincial, municipal politicians, especially given that he's already opined on the platform X about Canadian affairs previously?
So we have a particular policy called the Civic Integrity Policy around elections, and that is specifically focused on violations that may provide misleading information about how to participate in an election or try and intimidate people from voting. And so that would be applicable in a Canadian election context.
Do X users play any role in reporting disinformation? How does that work?
So that is where community notes comes into play. So we have a network of now 800,000 contributors around the world, including over 30,000 Canadians that have enrolled in the program. In order to become a contributor, you need an account in good standing, an account for at least 6 months, and a verified phone number. And then you apply, and we onboard folks every week in a fair and randomized process. And then they have the ability to start rating notes for their helpfulness, whether it contains a high-quality citation, whether it directly addressed the post claim, whether it's easy to understand, and whether it contains neutral or unbiased language. And then we use what's called a bridge ranking algorithm. And so for a post to have a community note, contributors who have historically disagreed on the helpfulness of community notes actually agree that this note is helpful. That's when it ends up on the post. It's called a bridge ranking algorithm.
Are you familiar with the Center for Countering Digital Hate?
Yes.
Mr. Fernandez, just for the record again, what's your role with X?
I'm a director. I head our government affairs and public policy in the United States and Canada.
So this would be directly in your purview. Are you aware of the report entitled "Social Media's Role in the UK Riots: Policy Responses and Solutions"?
No, I'm not.
Well, I'll give you some background. On July 29, 2024, there was a mass stabbing at a children's dance class in Southport, United Kingdom. 3 children died. Immediately following news of the attack, false information about the attacker's identity spread on social media alongside calls for action and violence. The next day, hundreds of people gathered outside a Southport mosque and hurled petrol bombs, bricks, and anti-Muslim abuse motivated by false information spread online that the attacker had been named, and I won't even rename it because I don't want to boost it anymore, and was both a Muslim and an asylum seeker. Acts of violence and public disorder, much of it featured anti-Muslim and anti-migrant sentiment, soon spread around the country. Now, posts containing the fake name were promoted by users using platform algorithms and recommended features. The Institute for Strategic Dialogue found that X featured the false name in its trending in the UK promotions, suggesting it to users in the What's Happening sidebar. Far-right figures with millions of followers capitalized on false claims that the attacker was an asylum seeker, spreading the falsehood further into the massive following bases. Now, one platform stood out. It was yours. It was X. And the owner, which we identified already, Mr. Elon Musk, shared false information about the situation to his 195 million followers and made a show of attacking the UK's government response to the outbreak of violence. Rather than ensuring risk and illegal content were mitigated on his platform, Musk recklessly promoted the notion of an impending civil war in the UK, Mr. Fernandez. And yet your company, X, refuses to sign on to a declaration on misinformation, on the practice of disinformation. What do you have to say about that, Mr. Fernandez?
About what in particular, sir?
About the fact that your platform was responsible for misinformation about the false name of a person who was identified as Muslim and an asylum seeker that reached potentially 1.7 billion people. Mr. Fernandez, out of all of the people here, X is the only company that refused to sign on to a code of practice on disinformation. And your owner, who is currently on the campaign trail with Donald Trump in a hyper-partisan role of X, contrary to your testimony at this committee, is responsible for this. What do you have to say about that to the people who were targeted in the UK, sir?
So we have clear policies on hate, abuse, and harassment. In the first half of this year, we suspended over 1.1 million accounts under these policies, removed over 2.2 million posts, and actioned an additional 5.3 million posts under hate, abuse, and harassment. So we do take it seriously. We do act on it. And I'm happy to follow up more on
the research, particularly relating to the UK riots. And when I say riots, I need you to go back and look at this. Look at the work that your company is involved in on the streets, creating chaos and violence by far-right extremists. The initial report gave an analysis, determined that X was a significant platform in the unrest. And I quote, the X platform is accounting for roughly 50% of all the public referrals of online content, double the proportion of its next largest platform. The CCDH quantified the reach that far-right influence has, spreading hate and false information garnered on X in the aftermath of the attack, facilitated by your blue tick promotion feature and enabled by the proprietor's decision to reinstate previously banned accounts. They also discovered in this report, sir, that X was profiting from the disorder by placing advertisements alongside the hate and the lies. What do you have to say about that, sir?
Again, I'm happy to follow up with my UK colleagues, and we'll talk to you more about our response in that scenario.
Is it an isolated incident, or do you also make a practice of profiting off of online hate?
No, sir.
Are you familiar with the Center for Countering Digital Hate's report entitled Hate Pays? How X accounts are exploiting the Israel-Gaza conflict to grow and profit?
I'm not familiar with that particular report, but I'm happy to talk about our response to the Israel-Hamas conflict.
It states that X appears to be profiting from ads served near content from hateful accounts exploiting the conflict. That hateful accounts benefit from the verified perks that boost the visibility on their post. Of the 10 accounts in the study that benefited from the paid-for blue tick verification, which X ensures gives their post greater visibility from prioritizing ranking on the platform, 6 of the hateful accounts have enabled X's subscription feature, enabling them to profit by charging followers to access exclusive content.
Mr. Green, that's 6 minutes right now, so...
I find it all despicable, sir. I'm going to say that, and I find the testimony incredulous. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Caputo, that completes our first round. We're going to go to 5-minute questions. So we're going to go to Mr. Barrett. Go ahead.
Mr. Adair, in the United States, your platform has a creator fund. And I know that Mr. Fernandez talked about that aspect of his platform. Can you quickly give us some sense on what the anticipated rollout or any plans to roll that out in Canada would be?
Sure. Thanks for the question. This is something we talk a lot about with Canadian creators. The Creator Fund, or the Creativity Fund it's called now, is specific to the U.S. and a few other countries. We haven't rolled it out globally yet. It's something we're always looking at ways that we can continue to help creators monetize their content and earn a living on their content. There are quite a number of other ways, though, that Canadian creators are thriving and making money by using TikTok. I know you have a constituent in your riding that I mentioned in my opening statement, Corey McMullen, and he uses it for brand partnerships and to sell his own items directly to his followers. He has an audience of over, I think, 400,000 or 500,000 followers. Live gifting is another major way that Canadian creators are able to monetize their platforms by going live and receiving virtual gifts. So we're constantly looking at ways that we can help our community leverage their audience and earn money or even make a living through TikTok.
Yeah, I appreciate that response. So I have a question that I'd like to put to each member of the panel, and it has to deal with the responsibility that verified users on your platforms have when it comes to the dissemination of disinformation and their responsibility. Mr. Fernandez, you talked about the great checkmark and the trust that users of your service can have when they recognize that great checkmark means that person is an elected official or a government official, and I want to read to you a post on X from 2023, 10/7. Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister posts, "Bombing a hospital is an unthinkable act, and there is no doubt that doing so is absolutely illegal." That post was viewed 2.7 million times. It's still live on your site today. Now, I want to juxtapose that with an ABC News story from 18 October 2023. I'm just going to read you the first paragraph. A day after Hamas-led Gaza Health Ministry claimed Israel had attacked the Al-Ali Arab Hospital in Gaza City, saying some 500 Palestinians had been killed, Israeli and U.S. officials, explosive experts, and President Joe Biden said Wednesday, and available evidence shows the destruction was caused instead by failed Palestinian terrorist rocket launch. End quote. How difficult is it for your users, but also your services, to manage this when we have this type of recklessness from not just an elected official, but from the foreign minister from a G7 country who's spreading what is demonstrably and evidenced fake news, false information, call it what you will. It's we talk about misinformation. The chair has pointed out before. That's a clever term for when people lie. What kind of challenges does this create with this type of actor posting this type of misinformation?
Sure. Times of conflict and disasters, people come to X to find out what's happening, and often, it can be challenging to understand what's happening in a conflict zone, such as the Israel-Hamas war. And this is where community notes can be really powerful and sometimes act faster than traditional fact-checking. But because so many people come to the service and there are a lot of different sources of authoritative information and important information, this is where folks can make better sense and get a more accurate picture of what's happening on the ground.
Yeah, and I'll note, and I regret that I don't have time for the other platforms to engage on this question. I think I have 45 seconds left, Chair. But I note that there are community notes that have been suggested, but an agreed upon note has not been yet posted. But I do think that that in this case that feature is important, because there's definitely added context, including the truth that should have been offered by that verified user, Canada's Minister of Foreign Affairs, when posting and not taking down something that's demonstrably false. So, thanks.
Mr. Green, go ahead. 2.5 minutes.
Thank you. And of course, much of the questions of the previous round were around the ownership and ByteDance. And I did hear what I would consider to be sometimes weasel words that are used in explanations. And I'll tell you why. Because the question wasn't about where it operates or where its servers are, who the board members are. The question was about the origins of ByteDance. And so is it not fair to say to the TikTok representative, Mr. Deere, that ByteDance under Chinese law does require compliance with Chinese law?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Green. ByteDance has entities that operate exclusively outside of China, such as TikTok, and they also operate businesses inside China. The TikTok does not operate in China. We do not store data.
Where is ByteDance based?
It's a global company.
Are you refuting that it's based in Beijing? Is that your testimony here today?
There are offices in China for ByteDance. As I said, they have Chinese businesses and entities that they run. But I mean, for TikTok, our headquarters are Singapore and Los Angeles.
I've suspended my use of TikTok subsequent to inquiries about foreign interference that I take very serious, waiting for investigations to unfold. I was an avid user of TikTok. I know many people who are. I give credence to what you're saying about people enjoying it. And I would put to you that, in fact, the reason why people spend so much time on TikTok is because of the power of the algorithms, the ability to profile people and continue to provide content to them that will essentially monopolize their time on the platform. There still remains a concern that, regardless of how you're answering it, you don't want to characterize it as ByteDance as a Chinese tech giant. I would. You don't want to say that it's Beijing based. I would suggest that it is. And yet here we are. We have countries around the world, and I'll say specifically the West, that are in investigating the use of the algorithms that TikTok has. What do you have to say to people like myself who've suspended their accounts because of the fears of the potential for foreign interference?
Thanks for the question. I appreciate that, and I appreciate that. I remember seeing your content on TikTok, and I think you used it in a great way to engage with your constituents.
I don't need that, Mr. Deere. What I need you to do is answer the question.
Yeah, I need a quick response.
We are absolutely committed to transparency and reporting on how we moderate content, where we store data, and any government requests that we receive for data or content removal. We are transparent in posting.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Green. Mr. Caputo for 5, and then Ms. Khalid for 5, and that'll be it. Go ahead, Mr. Caputo.
Thank you. I'm just going to pick up Mr. Deere, I hope I pronounced that correctly, on what my colleague Mr. Green was stating. Now, my recollection, this some time ago, was that government accounts were no longer able to use TikTok. Is that accurate?
Currently, there is an order from the Treasury Board that says you can't use TikTok on a government-issued mobile device.
Right. Okay. Now, did you have any interactions with the federal government after that occurred?
We continue to engage with the government on policy issues, and we did reach out and have some conversations with the Treasury Board following that decision.
Okay. Do you recall, from your perspective, what was the rationale for the government taking that action?
Pointing to generalized concerns that they pointed towards with data security. We provided them with information about how we operate, and our public position at the time that we stated was it doesn't make Canadians safer to just go after one platform. That if the Treasury Board or the government wants to set rules for what types of apps should be on government employees' devices, they should set a bar, and that should apply equally to all apps, not just to one app.
Okay. So if I understand you correctly, do you feel as though TikTok has been singled out as in your data security would be on par with perhaps the organizations that we have here at committee today?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Now, we've talked, this is about misinformation, disinformation, and we've talked a lot about community notes. And perhaps Ms. Hunley or Ms. Curran can help me out. I don't recall this. What is the equivalent of the Facebook community note?
So we have the largest global fact-checking network of any of the online platforms, and we work with over 90 different organizations around the world to fact-check content.
Okay. And so let's say you fact-check something and it is false. Then what?
So we have a range of treatments we can apply to it. We can apply a screen that says this content is false or partly false, and it will link to an external organization's website explaining what the fact-checking organization has found. We can also downrank or demote that content so that it is less visible to our users. For content that is particularly problematic, we can remove it altogether. So there's a range of different treatments.
And who decides what treatments a given post gets?
Yeah, our content review teams make the call on how content should be treated.
I see. Okay, and I mean the reason I'm asking this is because Mr. Dyer, in his opening, he talked about the prohibited information. It's a standard of some sort. I just have a kind of cryptic note here that I wrote to myself. Prohibited information that would cause significant harm. Do you recall that, Mr. Dyer?
Yep.
Yeah. So what's the threshold for significant harm?
My colleague Justin could describe that for you, please.
Hey, thanks for the question. So we consider a wide variety of harms that we remove, including election misinformation, such as undermining civic integrity, medical misinformation that may lead to significant physical harm or death, or things that may cause public panic or large-scale property damage, as a few examples.
Now, during an election, which, we're all parliamentarians here, we all use social media, but I think a lot of us, really don't enjoy the process because there's so much misinformation and frankly, a lot of really mean-spirited comments. But during an election campaign, which often is about 35, 36 days in Canada, we'll just go back to you, Mr. Elric. Is there a heightened awareness on TikTok's behalf with respect to these significant harms, or is it just kind of business as usual because there's just so much content to deal with?
Well, in the midst of elections, we take our responsibility to protect the integrity of the platform incredibly seriously and have a task force that are spun up to prepare and enforce all of our policies here. So we certainly do scenario planning and assess various different types of things that may happen and have dedicated teams looking to moderate and enforce content around election misinformation or hate or harassment, and partner as well closely with fact checkers who we leverage to assess the veracity of any of the claims that may come in.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Mr. Caputo. Ms. Khalid, we're going to go to you, but before I do, I just want to circle back to your earlier intervention about asking for documents, and I've looked back into the book, and it's clear committees, and we've had several requests throughout the course of this meeting. I know Mr. Housefather has made a request. There's been others that the clerk has noted, and we'll follow up with who that request has been asked of. But it does say that, we usually obtain papers simply by requesting them from their authors or owners. If the request is denied after the ask has been made, however, that the Standing Committee believes that there are specific papers that are essential to its work, it can use the power to order the production of papers by passing a motion to that effect. So typically the method is to ask, and then if we're not satisfied after that, then we can move a motion. So I just want to make that very clear before you start.
Just to clarify, I wasn't making a motion. I was just generally asking for those documents. So I hope that is taken as a serious request.
Okay. And we will certainly follow up with Mr. Fernandez on that. The clerk has noted the request, and she will check the blues to make sure that the request is accurate. Ms. Khalid, for 5 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll direct my next couple of questions to Meta, if that's okay. Ms. Curran, there was, on December 20th, 2023, a Human Rights Watch report. It was entitled Meta, Systemic Censorship of Palestinian Content. Now, hundreds of Palestinians users have reported being shadow banned or having their accounts suspended without any explanation. Does Meta acknowledge this as a form of censorship that deprives people in support of Palestinians' plight for their fundamental right to express their opinions online?
Thank you for that question. I'm not familiar with the report. I'm sorry about that. But look, last year we implemented a number of additional policy measures to address a spike in harmful content on our platforms, and those are still in place today. So we've taken extensive steps over the past 12 months to keep people safe.
I understand that, and I would appreciate if you could perhaps share those documents to us in written format, but I would like to reclaim my time if that's okay.
Sure.
I would like to have a little bit of understanding as to how repressing of content happens on Meta, on Facebook and Instagram.
So we have content policies called community standards that are published publicly. They're available on our Transparency Center.
So my question really is, how is it that some content, for example, if there's two sides to an issue, how is it that one side gets more repressed than another side, for example?
So our content policies are enforced fairly across partisan divides, across political divides.
And how do you ensure that that there is fairness in the marketplace of ideas that you provide to people not just in Canada but across the world?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So our content review teams are always looking at content decisions, making sure our policies are fair and are enforced fairly. We also recently set up something called the Oversight Board, which is a really interesting model that examines the decisions we make around content. So if we make decisions to remove content or leave content up that our users disagree with, they can appeal those decisions to the Independent Oversight Board, and that Oversight Board will take a second look at our decisions.
And where does that Oversight Board operate from?
I'd have to get back to you on that. It's an independent board. It's independent of Meta. So yeah, I'll get back to you with
if you can, please. I'd appreciate that. So in your comments to a colleague who had asked the question with respect to employees of Meta, you had, I think, mentioned there were 60,000 global. How many are physically working from within Canada?
I don't know the answer to that. We have 40,000 people working in safety and security, and I will get back to you on how many of those people are located in Canada.
Thank you. So you recently cut 21,000 jobs, including in trust and safety and customer service, over multiple rounds of layoffs. Your company dissolved a fact-checking tool that would have let news services like the Associated Press and Reuters, as well as credible experts, add comments at the top of questionable articles as a way to verify their trustworthiness. Reuters is still listed as a fact-checking partner, but an AP spokesperson said that the news agency's fact-checking agreement with Meta ended back in January. So how do you justify these cuts, especially when the year of 2024 is dubbed the election year and people do rely on you to get a lot of the information that they seek?
So we have the largest global fact-checking network of any of the online platforms. I don't know about Reuters specifically, but in Canada we use Agence France-Presse, and we're looking at bringing on another organization for the election specifically. And so we work with a range of organizations, over 90 now, to do independent fact-checking.
Thank you. And if there is any additional data that you can provide that would confirm what you've said today, I'd really appreciate that. Mr. Fernandez, I'll just go back to you really quickly on the blue check marks and apparently the ability now on X to be able to buy legitimacy for a number of dollars to amplify your voice, regardless of how accurate or and how that voice is or is not truthful. It is misinformation, disinformation, hate speech, etc. But you can purchase the blue check mark that then amplifies your voice. Has there been any study that has been done within X as to how that blue check mark and the accounts associated with that has any correlation with misinformation, disinformation campaigns, fact-checking expeditions on your platform?
I'm going to need a quick response, quicker than.
And I'm happy to take anything in writing, Chair, as you know.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to follow up.
Mr. Fernandez.
Yeah, I'm happy to follow up on the distinction between the different check marks and what our premium and premium plus subscriptions entail.
Okay.